Good morning, and thank you for joining us here on Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. This week, Ohio lawmakers got to work in the lame duck session. It's the final push to pass legislation before the end of the year. They covered a wide range of topics. This morning, we are going to highlight several bills. One, to increase the penalty for swatting calls, crack down on distracted driving, allow mental health days for students, and a take on transgender rights issues. Let's start with the proposed legislation that would prevent doctors from performing gender transition on kids. 10 TV's Kevin Landers spoke with people on both sides of that debate.
Everyone should vote no. Everyone should fight back.
A protester shouted to members of the Aging and Human Services Committee over a bill called Save Adolescents from Experimentation.
Because I'm strongly opposed to House Bill 454, banning gender-affirming health care for minors.
Among those who testified, Jeopardy champion Amy Schneider, who told the committee if she were to be denied puberty blockers, her life would be ruined.
I don't know that I could go on living. And I hope that I would, and I'd hope that I'd find a way to do it, but I really believe that I might not survive.
The bill would require minors who want to transition from their assigned gender to wait 2 weeks in order for a doctor to diagnose puberty blockers.
And this proposed legislation is dangerously discriminatory.
Those with trans children say the bill is an example of government overreach.
If passed, House Bill 454 would make my job as a father much harder.
State Representative Gary Click is the bill's sponsor.
I feel like we've made a number of strides to address their concerns, but I still think we have to listen to the kids who've been through this, who have regrets.
In fact, the bill was amended. It no longer requires bans on puberty blockers, but requires a child to seek a second opinion from a doctor before receiving gender-affirming medicine and must be screened for mental health and sexual abuse.
And so we have to give children time to figure out a little bit who they are without mind-altering drugs like puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones.
He says the bill is also an attempt to protect children who want gender affirmation surgery, then regret it later.
Parents said this bill is full of misinformation and the bill has roots in fear. How do you respond to that?
Oh, I'm not afraid of anybody.
The bill's future is uncertain since there was no vote to take it out of committee. At the State House, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Ohio is not the only state attempting to change law. The Florida Board of Medicine recently voted to start drafting a rule that would bar all minors in the state from receiving puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or surgeries as treatment for gender dysphoria. House Bill 619 looks to add mental health days for students. It would authorize school districts to allow children in grades K through 12 to take up to 3 mental health days as excused absences from school. School districts that allow for mental health days would be required to excuse a student's mental health day without a doctor's note. Schools must provide an opportunity for children to make up any schoolwork missed, and a student could take an in-school mental health day. State Rep. Willis Blackshear Jr. of Dayton is the bill's sponsor.
The purpose of it is that we want to tackle some of these issues on the front end, besides having to deal with some of these issues on the back end. Mental health is one of those things that oftentimes doesn't get talked about a lot. When a child is tired, a child doesn't feel 100%, we need to create an avenue for them to be able to say, hey, I need to take a step back. Just like how adults are, when an adult is tired and they don't feel like going to work, they can take the day off. I feel like a student should be able to have that same opportunities.
This week, the House passed a distracted driving bill after making a significant change. The bill originally aimed to cite people who were looking at their phones while at a stop sign or traffic light. Republicans managed to get that removed. The bill would make using a handheld phone a primary offense for adults. The current law is only those under the age of 18. The first offense would cost you a $150 fine, or you have the option of taking a distracted driving course. If you complete it, you won't have the points put on your license. 10 TV talked with the bill's sponsor, Republican Cindy Abrams, and another Republican who supports the bill, but doubts it will make the road safer.
The officer has to see you, and listen, you and I both know, you guys are on the road enough as the media, you see people driving down the roadway, swerving around, their faces are in their phones, they're looking right at their phone at the steering wheel. So that is what this law targets is, again, put the phone down, drive your car. You can still use your Bluetooth, you can still use all of your apps to listen to music. There's a single swipe for our Uber and Lyft drivers, you know, where they can still use their navigation as it's mounted in the car as they do. Again, I believe that we've come to, through this whole process, almost 2 years, a lot of common sense changes to the bill.
I'm not sure it's going to make the roads safer. I hope they do, but you know, there's an old saying, you can't fix stupid. And if people are going to be stupid, they're going to be stupid. The fact that they might get a ticket is not going to deter them any more than speeding is commonplace and reckless driving is commonplace. You know, people need to be smart, and they need to realize that you're driving a car at 60, 70, 80 mile an hour. You need to be focused on the road.
The safety of teenagers on the road is the focus of Maria's message. Nearly 700 kids in the Hilliard School District heard that message this week. 10 TV's Dom Taberry took his presentation to Hilliard Darby High School. You'll recall Dom lost his daughter Maria in a car accident back in 2013. Since then, he's taken her story to 148 schools, which means over 130,000 kids in Central Ohio have heard Maria's story and pledged to keep their hands on the wheel, their eyes on the road, and their mind on driving. You can go to 10tv.com/Maria's Message to learn more about that program. This week, schools across the state received fake 911 calls about false reports of an active shooter. It happened at 9 schools on Wednesday, including one in Columbus. This isn't the first time we've heard of these fake phone calls in our state. The same thing happened to Licking Valley High School in September. 10 TV's Kiana Deiches has more about how swatting could be criminalized.
Fake calls like these,
listen, I need a hostage negotiator,
could soon land people in bigger trouble.
It needs to be something more than a misdemeanor.
State Representative Kevin Miller is one of the authors of House Bill 462, hoping to increase penalties for people who make swatting calls. The hoax phone calls usually involve someone claiming an active shooting is happening at that moment.
It should be a felony level offense.
Miller previously served as an Ohio State Highway patrolman. He remembers responding to a swatting call in 2014 that put Denison University on lockdown.
Yeah, I remember loading rifles into my SUV to ensure that my units had those.
Under House Bill 462, swatting calls will become a second-degree felony. Those convicted would have to reimburse law enforcement for abusing emergency services.
So they're holding folks over longer, and the taxpayers are paying that. So that should be, in my opinion, that should be paid by the perpetrator.
It overcomplicates our criminal justice system. It leads to errors at trial. And it certainly does not treat the defendant fairly.
Nikki Klum is a policy manager for the Ohio Public Defender. She says the bill isn't needed because swatting is already a crime.
It's already covered under the inducing panic and making false alarm statute. So when you slightly change the word of a statute and continue to criminalize behavior that is already criminal, it just adds to confusion.
Miller, however, says he wants to send a message about pulling resources from people in real danger.
If you do this, you will face serious punishment and or fines and restitution.
Kiana Deiches reporting that bill was previously introduced with swatting as a first-degree felony with 3 to 11 years in prison. This week, lawmakers accepted an amendment to make swatting a second-degree felony with a minimum of 2 to 8 years. One issue 10 TV has been following closely is mail theft. And now U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown is pushing the U.S. Postal Service for answers. Last month, he gave the Postmaster General 30 days to respond to his concerns, and he says that hasn't happened.
When I write a letter to the U.S. Postal Service, I send it on Senate stationery. It's on behalf of 12 million Ohioans in Franklin County and beyond, and I expect them, I don't care if they personally call or write back, I expect them to address these issues, and we've had serious problems with mail theft with this Postmaster General.
And this comes a week after 10 investigators shined a light on this issue, specifically when it comes to thieves stealing checks from the mail and selling them online. 10 TV uncovered that you could be a victim and have no idea until the damage is done. To see that report, go to 10tv.com/10investigates. This week, the U.S. Senate advanced the same-sex marriage bill with bipartisan support. The Respect for Marriage Act would provide federal protections for same-sex and interracial marriages. 12 Republicans supported the measure, including outgoing Ohio Senator Rob Portman.
We have to do this. Second, we have to do it because in a recent Supreme Court case, there was this notion that maybe this would get revisited, this issue of same-sex marriage. So it's important that we resolve the issue for both of those reasons. And people who are in same-sex marriages are understandably very interested in having that resolved. They want to clarify it. I mean, they've made financial arrangements, maybe adoptions and so on. They want to be sure that that marriage can continue to be honored.
Republicans gain control of the House in Washington, and that means Congressman Jim Jordan of our state is in line to become chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Jordan met this week with a group of House and Senate Republicans to map out a strategy and determine potential investigations the committee might pursue.
We met with some folks who understand that we have a constitutional duty to do investigations, to do oversight, and we're going to do that in a way that's consistent with the Constitution, but we're going to do it aggressively. We were just talking about the DOJ some, the concern that we issued a 1,000-page report, 2 weeks ago?
AEP is fighting to restore your trust.
We let our customers down in June with respect to communications.
This after that massive outage failure with excessive heat over the summer. It's hard for many folks to forget. 10 TV is asking the agency's top person if it's prepared to battle a bitter cold winter. Ohio's top elections official is backing a new resolution trying to change how amendments to the state constitution are passed. The Ohio Constitution Protection Amendment would change Article 2 of the state constitution to require any amendments brought forth by a petition to pass with 60% of the vote. Right now, they must pass by a simple majority. Secretary of State Frank LaRose says he supports this legislation.
I also think that it's important that that we continue to encourage that kind of consensus building. And I think that if you don't think that your idea is broadly popular enough to muster 60% vote of the people, then maybe you should not consider bringing it to the ballot.
This resolution has been introduced to the Ohio legislature. We'll certainly follow that. More problems for Dollar General. Weeks after the Ohio Attorney General sued the company, alleging deceptive pricing, several Franklin County locations failed inspections. The Franklin County auditor announced 5 stores failed the inspections of price scanners, which were done in a 2-week period. Some items were scanned between 75 cents and $2 higher than they should have been. We asked the auditor if this is considered price gouging.
We are concerned by just how broad in the multiple stores. We're not sure why it's happening. Dollar General, though, it's not happening just in Franklin County. Other counties have had similar experiences. Other states have had circumstances where they've entered into settlement agreements. So something's going on there, and we just want to make sure consumers are aware and alert.
Ohio has also filed a lawsuit against Family Dollar for deceitful pricing. Google just settled a lawsuit over your privacy for millions of dollars. Ohio's AG was part of that lawsuit, which claimed Google's location tracking practices were deceptive. As part of the settlement, Google will pay $391 million across 40 states. The company will also be required to show more information about location tracking and provide more detailed summaries of the kind of location data they collect. It also limits Google's storage of location information. Now, even with these new guidelines, the Attorney General's office recommends taking a closer look at your devices.
The other thing I'll add is a lot of people may be getting new devices for the holidays, right? That's a big thing that people request. They want a new computer, they want a new tablet, they want a new smartphone. But what we need to remember when it comes to smartphones and really any sort of mobile device is that those come with privacy settings. So it's really important to understand your privacy settings, to check your privacy settings, to know what information's being shared with different apps and different companies. And it's really vital and really important for people to have that control over their privacy, over their location, and what they're sharing with others.
This weekend is the coldest weather we've had since March. Residents are concerned a bitter cold winter could mean more pressure on our power grids, and here's why. It's hard to forget when Central Ohio faced excessive heat back in June, doubled with storms, forcing 170,000 people to go without power for days. AEP turned off the power to save our grid until repairs could be made. So what's the electrical giant doing to prevent problems this winter? 10 TV's Kevin Landers is digging for answers from those in charge at AEP.
I remember the electric just going off. I mean, like no notice, no nothing, everything. And it was hot that day.
Mike and Jim Decker will never forget June 14th.
$2,500 worth of food gone.
Like thousands of AEP Ohio customers, they lost power for 3 days when the energy company initiated an emergency outage due to severe storms, extreme heat, and high demand. The electrical grid, the power lines that send electricity to your home, is old.
These were designed with the intended design life of about 50 years. So we're way past that.
The grid is having to deal with something it wasn't originally designed to withstand: frequent extreme weather events.
Over the last 6 years, power outages have more than doubled from the previous 6 years. So we know these events are occurring more, and we know that climate change is only getting worse.
It's at substations like this where high voltage electricity is converted to low voltage electricity, then it's sent to homes and businesses. It's through these power lines where 92% of all power failures happen. We wanted to know what AEP is doing to prevent another emergency shutoff.
We let our customers down in June with respect to communications.
AEP's president and CEO says the company lacked a robust alert system. Just 14% of customers in June signed up for text alerts. So what can be done to prevent another mass outage?
It's hard to plan for extreme weather.
Like ice on power lines. AEP says it's accelerated its tree cutting program to prevent trees from falling on lines, and it used laser imaging to determine the health of the grid. The company says it plans to spend between $800 to $900 million over the next 5 years to make the grid more resilient. 10 TV has also learned that AEP is negotiating with the Public Utilities Commission to extend the amount of outages it's allowed each year, as well as the duration of outages from 2 hours and 16 minutes to 2 hours and 38 minutes. AEP says the request is based on a growing population.
The system's bigger, and so more is required to maintain that.
For people like Jim and Mike Decker, they hope the power lines hold up when the temperatures begin to fall.
I figured if the power went out in the summertime, it could just as well go out in the winter because people are going to start cranking on, the furnaces and everything else.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
All right, back in June, the PUCO promised customers a post-incident review of AEP Ohio's decision to purposely cut off power to thousands of customers. 5 months later, that report is not finished. A spokesperson says there's no final timeline on when the report will be published. Now, with winter weather moving in, we are also looking at whether ODOT is ready to make sure the roads stay clear when the snow comes. Welcome back. Hospitals across the state are filling up with children who are sick with respiratory viruses. The Ohio Department of Health says the wave of cases we typically see in the winter is here now. They say this is not unusual to see high cases in the winter, but it's different to see so many cases this early. More patients are filling urgent cares and emergency rooms, and hospitals are still experiencing staff shortages. That's why Nationwide Children's Hospital is making some changes.
We're taking steps on the inpatient side to augment inpatient capacity by canceling scheduled or postponing scheduled surgeries or scheduled admissions that can safely be postponed so that we can maximize our ability to care for acute children with viral illnesses inside the hospital.
Health experts say flu hospitalizations are on the rise, and parents should really watch for symptoms of RSV in young children. They say if your child is sick, try to contact your primary care provider before going to the urgent care or to the ER. Now, when it comes to COVID-19 in Ohio, we're seeing a decrease in cases. The Ohio Department of Health reported more than 10,000 new cases this week, which is a decrease of nearly 700 from the previous week. And looking at hospitalizations, ODH reported more than 100 fewer admissions than last week. 10 TV has learned ODOT is short about 30 plow drivers in central Ohio. Columbus says it will have 115 to 120 plows ready to hit the streets this winter. But what about the rest of the area? And will your streets be cleared when the next big winter storm hits? 10 TV's Kevin Landers has the story.
A winter warning from ODOT to central Ohio drivers. Expect freeways to be snow-covered longer because there aren't enough drivers to clear the roads.
So 30 vacancies is 30 plow routes that another driver is picking up on top of their own assigned route.
ODOT says it needs 300 plows to cover central Ohio. Considering it takes up to 90 minutes for one driver to complete a route, fewer drivers means it could take hours before the interstates are back to interstate speeds, depending on how much snow falls.
So when we're talking about drivers that are doubling or tripling up on routes, we're talking about maybe 2 to 3 hours that you're waiting now, as opposed to the 90 minutes maybe you used to wait a couple of years ago.
The city of Columbus is taking a three-prong approach to plowing snow this year. If there's a dusting of snow, it will send 45 plows to do the job. 1 to 3 inches will put 55 plows on the road, plus an additional 15 smaller pickup plows.
So do you believe that 70 trucks is enough to handle the city?
I do.
The city says after hearing complaints from residents, it's now making residential streets a plow priority.
Those streets will now get serviced with every storm. In years past, we would only serve those streets when we received 4 or more inches. This year, they're going to get served with every storm. They're going to get plowed curb to curb when plowing is necessary.
The city of Columbus is responsible for plowing 4,700 lane miles, equivalent to driving from Columbus to Los Angeles and back again, plus another 200 miles.
So we're as prepared and ready as we can be.
Kevin Landers reporting there. The city also updated its Columbus Warrior Watch webpage. This year it will provide real-time updates where the plows are instead of lagging an hour behind. And that way you'll be able to see the last time your street was plowed. Our note of promise this week indicates room for improvement in who's leading Fortune 500 companies. A newly released scorecard put together by the Women for Economic and Leadership Development, WELD, African American Directors Forum, that's AADF, and JL Conaway Consulting reveals what's happening in our state when it comes to measuring the number of African American men and women on the boards and executive leadership teams in Fortune 500 companies here. 10 out of 23 Ohio Fortune 500 companies have no people of color on their leadership teams. 15 out of 23 have no African Americans on the leadership team. I talked with a consultancy partner and researcher, along with the president and CEO of WELD, who agree this is not just a wake-up call, but an opportunity.
I think some of the information we've already read about, some of the stories we've already seen, some of the business cases that say, you know, diversity is good for your business. That is the main reason why we want to continue to track the progress that these companies are making. It is good for business. I don't think anybody would challenge that as the quote case study. But then when you look to see what they're actually doing about it, we are woefully below.
All three of us have seen certain things happen in this community and the corporate sector. They rally around it and they get it done. Big, incredible things. So we have the capability and the talent. But it's fair to say that, you know, companies have to reach out and ask for help.
WELD is advising corporate leaders review compensation packages, check to see if the organization structure is set up to ensure that diversity, equity, inclusion is a priority for the company. We thank you for joining us here on Face the State today, and we wish you a wonderful week and a happy Thanksgiving.